Welcome to Books in the Freezer, a podcast dedicated to the deliciously disturbing world of horror fiction. Today, I am joined once again by author Briana Morgan, and we are getting spooky because we are talking about Halloween horror. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk about spooky books again.
Ooh, and it is the season. It is like the time of year.
It really is. It's witch bitch autumn. It's time.
It's the time we wait for all year long. I mean, we read horror books all year long, but it is like this is when everything comes together. Like all the vibes are there. Nature is giving us the vibes.
It just feels right.
You have a Halloween centric short story collection.
I do. The Trick or Treater and Other Stories. So that is a collection of short stories, as the name implies. They're centered around all kinds of different scary things. So there's monsters, there's body horror with a little touch of cosmic horror too. There's man versus nature. There's man's inhumanity to man. We have a little bit of everything. So no matter what you're into horror-wise, I think you'll like at least one of the stories.
Perfect. And Halloween centric, of course.
Yes, the very first story actually takes place the night before Halloween.
Ooh, okay. I did want to know because I know that's such a regional thing. What is it called, like in your area, the night before Halloween? Because I grew up in Southern California and it was called Mischief Night.
We actually, I don't think I know anyone who's ever called it anything except the night before Halloween. I've also heard Devil's Night,
Yeah,
but
I've
I
heard
think that
that.
was on like Rocket Power or something. Really aging myself there.
Rocket Power was the best.
It was pretty good. Yeah, I've heard Mischief Night, Devil's Night. I feel like there was another one.
So, Halloween Eve. One of the books I read takes place in New England and they call it Cabbage Night. It's like that's something
Why?
I don't know. People from New England, please confirm.
I don't know. Do people like carve cabbages or something?
Wasn't it like the pranking night? Maybe they are throwing cabbages at buildings. Who knows?
I'm gonna have to look that up after this now.
Do you dress up for Halloween? Are you a big Halloween person?
Oh, yeah. The past couple years, I haven't really been able to do much because, yeah,
The
the
state of
state
the
of the
world.
world. Yeah. And we moved into our house like almost 3 years ago. And I was so excited to be in a neighborhood with kids because I love seeing all the kids' costumes and I love handing out candy to trick-or-treaters. And I wanted to dress up for that. But I think this is the first year I'm going to get to do that. And I'm so excited. I'm going to be
Oh,
Chucky. I'm very excited. Kids like Chucky. I thought I would be too scary, but then I wore the costume to Dragon Con, and I had so many kids come up to me.
it is really funny how much like horror icons are like the kids are so into that. Well, like my son, not to out him, but he's a little scared of stuff. Like he has no interest in like actually watching horror, but like when we were decorating his room, he's like, "How about we paint it black? We put a giant picture of Pennywise on one wall, and then on the ceiling in red paint, we put You'll Float Too." I'm like, I'm like, this seems for someone who is scared to sleep with the lights off, I think maybe a little intense.
It's not, I mean, that's not really easing into it either. That's just like full tilt. He wants to be terrified every night.
I'm like, you are my son. Like I do.
I can see it.
He's gonna be Ghostface for Halloween, and then I'm gonna be Sydney
That's
because
so cute.
I have the clothes for it.
I was gonna be sexy ghost face, literally just the mask and then like lingerie, but then I remembered that one, it's cold, and two, I don't the logistics of having that much skin showing at a party where people are drunk and there's stuff being spilled and there's like fire. I don't need that.
No.
Just don't need that.
No, and yeah, I think I always forget how cold it is in October. And like I live in Pennsylvania now where it's, a bit colder than where I grew up in California, but it still is like I remember even growing up, like my mom would be like, "You have to wear a long sleeve shirt under that." And I'm like, "You're gonna ruin the costume, Mom. I can't wear a jacket with this costume. It's gonna ruin it."
The aesthetic. When I was in college, I used to be like, oh, I'll do the sexy Halloween costume thing. And I never did it. I've always just been scary. So I think part of me, like, that still wants to kind of fit in is like, oh, yeah, I'll do it this year. It'll be wild because I never do it. And I'm just like, no, I want to be scary.
I think it's cool to lean into that. Oh, I always want to like I always in my mind like plan out costumes and then I don't do anything and then it's like the week before Halloween and I'm like I'm gonna throw together random stuff I have. Here we go.
I did that one year. I literally was just, I just used stuff I had and then I drew like two lines here and I put my hair in pigtails and I did like fake freckles and made my eyes look bigger and I was a creepy doll. And people love that. And it took like 2 minutes.
So sometimes those are the best ones. Those are the ones that count. So growing up, was your family really into Halloween? Like, did you guys decorate, do trick or treating?
So yeah, I actually, I mean, I know we've talked about this. I grew up religious, so we would go to the fall festival, but it wasn't like Halloween was off limits or anything. It was just, it was like an obligation almost. We would go to a fall festival dressed up, and then we would come home, and then we would go trick or treating. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember like sometimes I would be resentful that we had to go to fall festival because it meant we couldn't start trick or treating as early as everyone else. And I was always worried that the other kids would get all the good candy. But yeah,
Yeah,
my mom used to make our Halloween costumes.
really.
Like I remember my brother, he was like 3. We were dressed up as the Hunchback of Notre Dame characters. So as Esmeralda, I had a store-bought dress and I like spray painted my hair black. That was it. And then my brother, my mom like sewed a pillow into a shirt for him and like made him this little Quasimodo outfit. It was so cute, but it was like the hump was bigger than he was.
At least it was just a pillow. I remember when I was little, my mom wanted me to be Snow White just because I was such a pale child, a pale, dark-haired child.
You have to. It's your
and,
culture.
and I was like, no, absolutely not. Like, I'm standing up for all the pale, dark-haired children. And I remember it's funny because it's the same age my son is. When I was like 7 or 8, I wanted to be Ghostface, and I was Ghostface for Halloween. I had the scream mask, and I was like, yes, I have broken free from the curse of Snow White.
It's a legacy. I love that.
It is. I know I grew up religious too, and this is like the weird thing because I went to a fundy church that was like, wild. Like I've talked about it. Uh, but the youth pastor was really into Halloween, so they would put on like a haunted house, like a haunted thing you like walked through. They would like the whole indoor school building. They would do like fog machines and hire like the teens as actors to like come out, and you had things you had to like crawl under and through, and then there was someone waiting at the end with a chainsaw. Like they got really into it.
Oh. So it was like a haunted house though, not like a hell house or a judgment journey.
No, but when I was in college, one of the ministries there did put on a hell house.
I have
And
so many feelings about those.
oh man, and for okay, listeners that are not aware, a hell house is like disguised as this like haunted house experience, but you go in and you see these different vignettes that are just these like dramatic stories of like people dying without getting religion and going to hell and seeing like people go to hell. Like it's just an awful traumatizing experience. And my college roommate was like part of putting that on, and she would like come home and be like, we'll come back to the dorm and talk about like, oh, what a great service they were doing and how she just like really felt a part of. I'm like, okay.
I the I saw some of the wildest stuff in hell houses. Like I've seen like
I've never done one. You've done one?
I've seen like 3.
Ooh,
My
tell
dad
me.
was a
Tell
youth
me.
pastor. So this one I remember they had this man that was dying of AIDS,
Oh boy. Oh,
obviously. Because anyway, I don't have time to get into that.
I know. I'm like, that
So
is
they
a
had the
lot
man
there.
dying of AIDS and they had like his family crying over him. And for some reason they just made you stay in the moment where his family is just sobbing for way too long. I'm like, we can move on. We can move on. Let's go. And it was like really well done. So it felt real. And then that same Hell House, but a different year. It was actually called Judgment Journey. I don't think that's branded. I think we're good. They did an abortion gone wrong scene.
Oh, I'm sure it was handled with the most nuance.
Oh, it was very bad. I'm not even sure what I was seeing. There was just a lot of blood, and there was a woman on a table and screaming.
Mm,
The worst one was we walked through this part that was supposed to simulate like the end times, so it looked like a tent city. And there were people like with the barrel with the papers and the fire, um, just like warming themselves, and people are talking about like selling their children to get food and stuff like that. And I'm like, what am I supposed to be learning here? I don't understand.
yes. So for listeners who are not aware, the end goal of this, the point of this is that you're led through all these horrifying images, and they're essentially trying to scare you into praying and accepting their religion. Is really what the end goal is here. Like, you get led down and you get sent to like a person that's like, oh, if you don't want to end up like the people in this play, like, it's very gross and very manipulative, and we have a lot of feelings about it, clearly.
Yeah, they're also, I feel like they are much gorier than any haunted house I've ever been, just unnecessarily. I'm thinking of there's a haunt around here, Netherworld. It's like one of the best in the country. I last time I went there, I was still a vegetarian, and they had this one scene that was very like Texas Chainsaw Deliverance-esque, where this man's going like, "Hooey, you see my pig?" And he's like, "You want to eat my pig?" and all this other, just saying weird shit. And I just very loudly was like, "I don't eat meat, sir. I don't eat meat." And the guy started laughing, and he had to like go to the side. I broke him.
They weren't prepared for that answer. Like,
They weren't. I also, people tend to target me because I'm only like 5 feet tall. They think I'm gonna be the easy scare, and I'm not the easy scare. So it's really unfortunate. I aggressively compliment the costumes instead.
I'm 5'7". They should go for me. I am absolutely the easy scare. It was like I would walk in somewhere and I'm like, I know that someone's gonna pop out of that coffin. I know it, and I'm saying it out loud. I'm like, someone's gonna pop out of like every single time.
God, it's I've seen people get punched in haunted houses. Tis the season.
I have not done like a non-religious affiliated one, apparently. So maybe that's something I'm gonna have to do sometime.
I think Pennsylvania has some good ones.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Southeast has the two biggest ones in the country or whatever. My brother works at Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando, which is a different level. Never been to that though.
Yeah, growing up, I know there was Knott's Berry Farm would turn into Knott's Scary Farm. Like, that was a big one. I think Universal there, yeah, would put on their big Halloween Horror Nights.
Huge because they use the sets from the movies and stuff, so their production value is a little higher.
That is on the bucket list. I know that there are a ton of movies that are horror movies that are set during this special night. I would say maybe one beloved franchise.
Maybe has it in the title. I think it's ending or someone's dying.
Oh my, it comes out this Friday. As of this recording, it has not come out yet.
My fiance's like, "Are you gonna watch that one?" Like, he was almost just like disappointed, and I replied like equally disappointed. I was just like, "Yeah,
I know. Well,
yeah."
I know. My husband was like, "Are you gonna?" And I'm like, I have to, because I have to be part of the discussion. I don't have to, but I'm like, I need to know what's going on. And he's like, "But you are the reason these keep getting made, because of people like you that will watch it no matter what."
But it's ending. I mean,
know.
that's what horror fans do. We will go to shitty films just because we like to have fun.
When did you first watch Halloween? I guess the original, or was that your first experience with the Halloween franchise? Did you start at one?
I started at the first one. I caught it on AMC during Fear Fest one year. AMC Fear Fest really raised me. I feel like it nourished me and it fed me. I would just, anything that was on, I would just have the TV on, and if I caught like, I'd catch like the end of Cabin Fever or like the beginning of Halloween H2O. Just, it's not a good example.
No, that's funny because I was just listening to This Ends at Prom, and they just did the original Halloween, and they both talked about, like, Harmony and BJ were talking about how, like, they got in through AMC Fear Fest. Like, that was where they watched it the first time. So you are not alone.
Yeah, it was edited, censored
Yeah.
certain parts, obviously. So by the time I think I finally watched it as a movie on its own, I think was in college. And I was just like, oh, there's a lot more in here. There's a lot more
Like, I
sex,
don't
there's a lot
remember
more
that.
stabbing. Yeah, there's a lot more nudity. They didn't show that one. But they showed the scene from Cabin Fever where she's shaving her legs, so I don't know.
I think about that scene every time I shave my legs.
It's every day. Every single day I think about Cabin Fever, and I don't even that's one of those I watch it every year, but I don't even know if I like it. I just kind of make myself watch it. It's that one and Pet Cemetery and Cujo. Those are like the three I have to watch.
On during this time.
Yeah, I will say the three I have to watch that I'm not sure I still like.
I
Um,
gotcha.
I mean, obviously Trick or Treat, The Shining, and all that, but I like those. These are just like, it's like a family obligation. I have to go visit my weird uncle.
Yeah, it's like a family dinner you go to and you're like, why am I here? I did not like Cabin Fever, but that scene still I think was effective and that it absolutely scarred me, as you can see.
Yeah, I
Uh, but,
saw that movie at like 13, and no,
but you mentioned another popular Halloween anthology film.
Trick or Treat, which I've had people ask if mine is related to that, but they're spelled different. It's not. I wish they were related. I wish I just got to write Trick or Treat IP. I don't know if that's a thing, but I would write it.
It's gotta be. I'm sure you gotta write like the novelization. Would it be an anthology? An anthol? It's not really like a novel. I'm like really trying to like think about this. I'm like, if this got a novelization,
You could
would
make
be
it a
like
novel
you could, yeah.
with like interconnected parts or like a frame narrative. I wouldn't, but you could do that.
I saw that for the first time a few years ago. It is it's a must watch, I think, for this time of year. It's so good. You have little Sam.
I love him.
I love the Anna Paquin storyline. I think that's probably my favorite, although I think that the overarching like bus driver one is like pretty good. I don't know. There's a lot. Like there's not really a weak story
Yeah,
in the anthology. It's really good. One that I've recently started watching every year is Haunt, that I was like really impressed with.
I don't know if I don't think
It's
I've
on.
seen that one. Just Haunt. I have to look it up because I cannot remember if I've seen it. No.
Briana, you have to.
An extreme haunted house.
Yes.
This sounds like a creepy pasta or like a no sleep story. So yeah,
I could see that. It does have
the
those.
vibes.
The vibes are there.
Great. Okay, that's what I'm doing tonight.
But I don't know. I really like that one. I think it has like a good script where like all the elements kind of like come back around. Like I think it does a good job of like, here's this information. This will come back later. And then setting this like effective haunted house. And I'm always like, I don't know. I'm like, it's good. Every time I watch it, I'm like, great. I don't know. Love it.
Is it found footage or is it just
No,
okay?
it's not
Because it
found
kind
footage.
of sounds like the house is October built, which is found footage. But that one, I need to watch that one again when I'm not drunk because the only two times I've seen it, it was like the third movie at a Halloween party. So that's the
Gotcha.
level we were at.
I have started and stopped it like many times, and I always get like 20 minutes in, and I'm like, I don't think I like this. And I'm like, I'm not going to force myself to finish it. And then 2 years later, I'm like, you know what? I think I'll give it another try. And then it happens again. I get like 20 minutes in, and I'm like, I don't think I like this, and I'm not going to force myself to finish it. And we're just on this ongoing.
Yeah, I it keeps getting recommended to me, and I feel bad just be like, I didn't want to finish it. But that's valid because I do the same with books. I still feel guilt about that though.
Oh, speaking of found footage, though, Hell House LLC.
Oh, I love it.
I love it so much.
It's so
Yes.
scary. The clown in the basement. Oh God. Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh, that unnerved me. Well, the whole time I was up until that point, I was watching it and I was like, okay. But I've mentioned before, I have a thing with like dolls, and that was kind of doll adjacent. And yeah, just this clown. You turn away, you put the camera back, and it's moved. Ugh, no.
I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Oh, I hate it. Ugh. Have you seen Ganjam Haunted Asylum?
Yes, but I don't
That one's
remember much
scary.
about it. Yeah, that's a scary one.
That's pretty much all I remember is that I was like, oh, at one point while I was watching it, I was just like, oh, holy shit. I'm actually frightened. And then I've heard, what is that, Dead Stream or something like that has been recommended to me.
That's like brand new, right?
Yeah, it's been funny. Someone thought it was Unboxed, my play, because they're kind of similar. Same vibe, like,
Yeah.
like shitty live streamer trying to make up for it. Yeah. And I was like, this is right up my alley, but I haven't started it yet because I'm afraid I'll love it and I'm afraid I'll make it my entire personality. So I'm just like staying away from it for my own good, I guess.
Holding off on it for a bit. Also, did you watch Hellfest? The one about the people that go to the like amusement park on Halloween and there's like a little haunted house walkthrough.
No.
I think that one's on Netflix, but that was pretty good.
I'll look into that one too. I haven't heard of that.
Night of the Demons, also set on Halloween night. You haven't seen that or the remake?
No, you're giving me some good ones.
My 2-year-old has discovered Halloween Town. And she loves it. She wants to watch it basically every day. She does love Hocus Pocus too. Doesn't want to watch Hocus Pocus 1. Like I try to recommend it. I'm like, it gives you a little bit more context. Like we kind of explains who these ladies are and what's going on. She's like, no, Hocus Pocus 2. Okay.
I used to joke that like growing up, you're either like a Hocus Pocus kid or a Halloween Town kid. You can like both, but there's definitely one that you prefer. For me, it was Halloween Town.
I was Halloween Town. I had seen Hocus Pocus like once or twice. A few years ago, our township did a drive-in. Like it was like during COVID, so like all of us were like in our cars and they put it up on the big screen. And that was fun. But I'm like, yeah, like I don't know. I wasn't a big Hocus Pocus girly growing up. A big Halloween Town person though.
Oh yeah, I wanted to live in Halloween Town.
I did put House of a Thousand Corpses in here though, as I've mentioned many times. Not quite my jam, but I know a lot of listeners really like it, and it is Halloween centric. But if you love it, that's very cool.
I actually forgot it was on Halloween somehow. I'm not a big Rob Zombie fan.
Yeah, he's
just not my taste.
No, he's a specific. I was gonna say acquired taste. He's a specific flavor. I don't know how to put it. Like
well, it's like Eli Roth.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the same way.
Also.
How did I know?
This episode is brought to you by Fangoria, the world's best horror and cult film magazine since 1979. Listeners can use code BOOKSINTHEFreezer to get 20% off their order. That includes, of course, merchandise and first-time subscriptions and single issues of the magazine. Not only are there tons of articles and interviews about upcoming horror movies, there's a regular segment by Stephen Graham Jones all about slashers called Slasher Nation, so you're going to want a copy. So again, that is code BOOKSINTHEFreezer, and thank you, Fangoria, for supporting the show. All right, well, should we talk about some books?
We should.
So I feel like this is a theme when you come on, because last time we did found footage and I talked about scan lines and I'm like, this is a deeply sad and depressing book. So I have brought another melancholy story. I bring you The Night Country by Stuart Onan.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I saw this on a lot of lists. So I'm like, oh, this is
It's so sad. It's so sad.
Yes, I didn't know it would be that sad because it was just on reading lists. It's like, oh, if you're looking for like Halloween reads, like this is on the list. It's a ghost story. It takes place in New England on Halloween night. I was like, okay. So this takes place in the New England town of Avon on Halloween, where the year before a car full of teenagers died in an awful car accident. The story is narrated through the three teenagers that died, that are kind of visiting the different people that were affected by the car crash. Two of the teenagers survived. One of them, seemingly physically unscathed. The other one with serious brain damage to where he's going to have to be taken care of by his parents essentially for the rest of his life. So you are following the police officer that was kind of chasing them when they lost control of the car. And so there is a lot of like blame that he's placing on himself and guilt that he is living with, like around especially the anniversary. You are following both of the survivors. You're following Kyle. Kyle is the one who sustained really bad brain damage. You're following like his mother as she's like, looking at what her life is now and really struggling with a lot of tough feelings about what happened. And, she's one of the lucky ones. Like her son survived this, but her life is so different now than what it was. And his life is different now. And, all the dreams that they had for each other. And like, what does that mean now? Oh my gosh, this book made me cry.
I'm like
several times.
Tearing up just remembering it. That book made me cry so hard I almost threw up, which is, it's easy to do.
I was just not expecting to be hit with something so emotional. And then Jake, I think, is the teenager that survived unscathed, who just, but he had his girlfriend on his lap, like, and they weren't buckled in. And so, the whole book, he's just like looking at pictures of them and remembering. And it's like, oh my gosh, like just.
It's a lot.
It is so much. So you are like following this whole town that is just overwrought with grief and, narrated through like these kind of snarky teenagers, like making jokes like, oh, like I see you, like it's okay, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like a weird mix of tone that I think works very well to cut the tension and cut this like just onslaught of sadness.
Yeah, and it is really well done. I think if you know that it's going to be emotionally draining going into it, I feel like that's better than if you're just kind of blindsided. Because I would say it's worth reading.
Beautiful story. I highlighted like several passages. I think Stuart Onan is such a good writer. From like the few things I've picked up from him, I think he does this slice of life story really well. Like I mentioned it in a previous episode, but he did one called Last Night at the Lobster. Have you read that?
No.
But it's about this Red Lobster, and it's following the shift of people that work there. And it's like the last night before this Red Lobster is shut down, and you're following, like if you've ever worked at a restaurant, you get the like relationships with people, but really getting into like, who are these people? What are they going with? What are they going through? What is driving them as they're like going through their shift, and like this is going wrong and that is going wrong, but they also have like interpersonal drama and issues outside of it. And it's like so masterfully done for that being the premise of the story. He also did one called Songs for the Missing, which I think I can see he's kind of played around in that playground before, because it's about a like teen girl that goes missing, and you're following like her family and her boyfriend kind of in the months and years after that, and like how that affects them. I think in a situation where there is no closure, there is no body, there is no answers. Like, how do you move on? Can you move on? How do you process that?
That also seems very sad.
Yeah, I'm like, he likes hard-hitting topics. So as far as rating goes, I would say this is room temperature. It is technically a ghost story set on Halloween. I would not go into it with those expectations. This is a tearjerker. I would say this is definitely horror adjacent, going more for tears than tension. That is The Night Country by Stuart Onan.
So my first pick, I'm really excited. It's Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar. It's YA horror. It surprised me in how gory it was for YA, because I think if I hadn't known it was YA, I wouldn't have guessed that, because some of the kills were very brutal, bloody, gory, just It was a lot. And it's about this girl named Quinn Maybrook. She moves to this small town with her dad, and there's this tension in the town because the corn syrup factory, I think it is, shut down. And a lot of people rely on it for jobs, and then you have kind of the new money and the new people coming in, and there's class tension and all of that. And there's the Bay Pen, the company that shut down, their mascot was this really scary clown named Friendo, and he is the clown in the cornfield. Someone dressed up as Friendo during their big kind of founders festival just starts a murder spree, and as the book unfolds, you realize that there are multiple people dressed as Friendo killing people, and then it gets worse because they're killing kids. And I know I'm not even a mother, but anytime I read something where kids are getting killed, it's like 10 times worse. But it's very good. There's a sequel. I can't say anything about the sequel because I just started it, but I'm enjoying it so far. I would say if you're a fan of Scream, you'll probably like this. All of mine I've tried to tie to like different movies. So yeah, and in terms of scariness, I would say it's just like a fridge, because violence doesn't necessarily scare me, but I did think about some of the kills, and it was pretty brutal. But yes, that is Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar.
I had so much fun with that one. That's such a good pick. And yeah, I did feel like it was very Scream adjacent, or yeah, very much delving into that like teen slasher where it's like fun but also violent. Adam Caesar's great. I have the sequel in my audiobook library, just like waiting.
Yeah, it's fun so far. So far, the sequel where I'm at kind of deals with like moving on from trauma. So I love when horror sequels explore that idea, like when they actually have characters reacting to the events of the first film instead of just like acting like it didn't happen.
Yes. Yeah, I am very excited to delve into that. My second pick, I did something very different. I went with like a travel memoir. It is Season with the Witch, The Magic and Mayhem of Halloween in Salem, Massachusetts by J.W. Ocker. And he basically lives my dream where he spends the entire month of October in Salem, Massachusetts, like with his family, and writes about it and like interviews people that have lived there and goes to all the attractions.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right? I'm like, this was my dream. Thank you so much.
I haven't read this one either.
I was really excited to read it. He has a new book that just came out, The United States of Cryptids. Like he did that.
I have that book.
So this was one of his like previous books. He's in a lot of like horror nonfiction. Because he did I also have his other one, like The Cursed Objects, where he talks about like Annabelle and stuff like that. So yeah, this was like a travel memoir as he spent a month there, and he talks about like how busy it gets, and it was so hard for him to even find a place to stay for that long that like he had like arrangements for like half the month, and then he like made friends that like let his family stay in their house for like the other half of the month, just because it is impossible to get arrangements for that long of a stay. There is like a whole parade literally on the 1st of October to kick off the official Halloween season. A fun fact is that it's the third most popular Halloween tourism destination behind Derry, Ireland, which I was like, my first thought was, but this would have been an episode of Dairy Girls. And then I was like, no, it wouldn't have, because it was during the Troubles.
Oh, no.
That was like my immediate second thought, because I was like, why isn't there an episode of Dairy Girls where like they're getting ready for all the tourists that are going to come in? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I literally forgot the setting of Dairy Girls for a minute.
Yeah, the tone is not the same.
No, I don't think that was a high time for Halloween tourism. But apparently it is now. Like I was looking online and they have a huge parade. They have like fireworks. They have a bunch of stuff. Like it is I guess the top destination. I think the top destination in Europe.
Wild.
But the second one was Anoka, Minnesota, which Minnesota people, I really am going to need more information on that. They've branded it the Halloween capital of the world.
I know Shane Hawk has a book called Anoka.
Yeah.
That's the only association I know of. I cannot believe that Salem is not the most popular because
I
I
know.
every single year at least one person is like, "Oh, are you going to go to Salem?" I've never been up there. Everyone just assumes that's the thing I do. I want to go sometime, but I'm just like I don't like huge crowds. They're
So
just very into it.
yeah. So I thought that was really interesting, but it was also like a lot of contemplation on like the interesting separation of like the history of Salem versus like how it is now, where it's like, ooh, like everything is witches, uh, and oh, like the person that ran the trials, like, oh, their house is like a spooky like photo op destination now. And I thought it was like, yeah, like their high schools, like their mascot is witches, like their police force have like witches on broomsticks on their cars, like it is like that is the town mascot, the town symbol.
That's so weird.
And so he
I
was
I
a
guess I
lot of,
didn't think about that.
yeah, so like a lot of like, how do you deal with the history and with this, which I thought was like very interesting. But also, I follow a lot of horror people on TikTok, and I feel like all of them are in Salem right now making TikToks, and I'm jealous here. Like, okay. And this didn't help.
Someday I'll get up there. I'm gonna make the pilgrimage.
Me too. So that, I mean, it's a travel memoir. I would say extremely room temperature. It's not going for scares, but that is Season with the Witch, The Magic and Mayhem of Halloween in Salem, Massachusetts by J.W. Acker.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna pick that one up. My next one is Dead Leaves by Keelan Patrick Burke. It is a collection of 9 scary stories. Well, subjective, but they are all set on or around Halloween. There's varying levels, so there's stories that deal with grief. There's stories that deal with the idea of like an urban legend. It's a little bit of everything, and it is very short, but Keelan's prose is just, I don't know, it's just so good. I love his writing style. I feel like he's very good at putting you in the moment of something. Um, and yeah, I also love that the cover just screams Halloween because it's the orange leaves and then it's got like the pumpkins. It's just perfect for Halloween. And it it didn't scare me, so I would almost say room temperature, but there are some things in there that might scare other people. So it's room temperature for me, but maybe fridge, depending on what scares you. And that was Dead Leaves by Keelan Patrick Burke.
I've seen that around, and it is very autumnal.
Yeah, it's sadder than I was expecting. Also,
Huh.
there's a touch of grief horror in there.
That's one I've been wanting to pick up. So I
Yeah,
will have to do that.
it's about the size of the Trick or Treater.
Okay.
They're similar sizes.
My last pick is Benny Rose, the Cannibal King by Haley Piper. This is a novella. It is part of the Rewind or Die series, and this is a kind of urban legend slasher about a town in Vermont that has a local legend of the cannibalistic Benny Rose. And we follow kind of this group of girls that wants to play a prank on this new girl Halloween night and kind of like prank her about like, ooh, Benny Rose, the urban legend, but uh-oh, he might be realer than they all imagined. This was a lot of fun, but I also really liked a lot of the things that it got into. And I think kind of similar to Clown in a Cornfield, I think that folk horror element that's like, who in this town do we either like place blame on, or are we willing to sacrifice? Like, who do we see as expendable in order to like keep our peace? Like, what is our peace worth, and is it like certain people's lives? And there was like a lot of good plot twists in here that I didn't see coming. And I really liked the kind of like badass like final girl gang of it. Like, I think at the end, when I think like the final scene, you're just like, good for you all. I won't say who survives, like that's like, I'm being very vague here, but like those of you that are still standing, you deserve it.
That one's a lot of fun.
It is really fun. So this is available like on Kindle Unlimited, and if you have Hoopla like I did, the audiobook is there if you're a big audiobook person like me and a library person. It's a good one to check out. It's a novella, so I think it was only like 3 or 4 hours. It's definitely worth checking out. That is Benny Rose, the Cannibal King by Haley Piper.
My last one is The October Boys by Adam Millard. Have you read this one?
No, I've seen this one around though.
Yeah, it's I feel like I just started seeing it, but I don't actually know when it came out. It feels very Black Phone-esque to me.
Ooh, okay.
In terms of there's this town where this guy's snatching up kids, and the word on the street is that he drives an ice cream van, and they call him the Ice Cream Man. Not the most original nickname, but that's what he's called. And in the story, this adult man is recounting his childhood growing up with this tragedy and with, people he knew getting snatched up and never being seen or heard from again. And one of his friends gets taken one night when they're all out. So he goes back to this town where all of this happened this night, so many Halloweens ago, to kind of put together the pieces of the puzzle and get some answers. And it feels like in that it's like a group of adults coming together to experience something as adults that they experience as children. And there's kind of the feeling of there's like an impending battle, and there's life or death stakes, and it's just it's Black Phone meets It, but it feels more real to me. It's not as big, like, it has like the alien and the cosmic situation. And it's just a person, and people are terrible sometimes. It's kind of sad. I would say it's more room temperature. There are no like on page jump scares or anything like that, but just the idea of someone in your town is taking kids and there's nothing you can do about it. That's uncomfortable, to say the least. But yeah, it takes place on Halloween, and I'm a sucker for the coming of age trope, and there's a little bit of that in there as well. So if you're into that too, you'll probably like it. It's The October Boys by Adam Millard.
Ooh, I didn't know that that's what it was about. That was just like a cover I had seen around, and when I was like, oh, like maybe I'll pick that one up for this episode. So, I'm glad to hear that that's what it's about. I will be moving that up my TBR. Also, I didn't mention this at the top of the episode, but Halloween Horror was one of the very early episodes that I did with Rachel. So if you're wondering why like I didn't mention the Halloween tree or things like that, it is because you can go back and listen, and those were closer to our picks over there. I remember I also read Haunted Nights, which was an anthology edited by Ellen Datlow that had really good stories. Like I still strongly stand by that. If you love like a Halloween anthology, yeah, it was very good. It had like Seanan McGuire, has like John Langan, has just like really solid Halloween short stories in there. So really liked that. I don't remember what my other pick was for that one. I know those were my two, is that I read The Halloween Tree and Haunted Nights. Yeah, I'm like, it was years ago. I don't want to do math. I am bad at math, but
I tried to pick ones that I hadn't seen as often, or that just were newer, because I felt like a lot of the same ones, like the Ellen Datlow one, that one's very good, but it gets mentioned a lot. And The Halloween Tree, obviously, and Something Wicked This Way Comes. It's very good.
I also thought about doing The October Country by Ray Bradbury, but I just did The Illustrated Man on space horror, so I was like, I'm gonna give Ray Bradbury a break. Those are our picks. This episode is brought to you by Libro FM. Libro FM is the first and only company which lets you purchase audiobooks directly from your favorite local bookstore. You can pick from more than 150,000 audiobooks, including bestsellers and recommendations from booksellers. You'll get the same audiobooks at the same price as the largest audiobook company out there. You know the name. But you'll be part of a different story, one that supports community. If you're new to audiobooks, they're the perfect way to get more books into your busy life. Listen during your commute, while doing chores, walking the dog, or just relaxing at home. All you need is a smartphone and the free Libro FM app. If you already love audiobooks and don't know what to listen to next, check out recommendations and curated lists from people who know audiobooks best. Booksellers. And us. We also have a playlist on there full of books that have been recommended on this podcast. Books in the Freezer special offer. You get 2 audiobooks for the price of one, just $14.99, with your first month of membership using code FreezerBook. This offer is valid for new members in Canada and the United States. Thank you, Libro FM, for supporting the show. So, Briana, what have you been enjoying in horror recently?
So I love video games. There are 2 spooky video games that I just played, and I hyper-focused on both of them to the point that I spent like 2 whole days literally just on the computer, which wasn't great for other aspects of my life, but it was fun. The first one was Madison, which is like you have a camera and you're exploring your family's old house, and you can only... There are certain puzzles you can only solve by taking a photo, and it's like a Polaroid camera. So you have you have to wait for it to develop. And there are certain scenes where you're in the dark and you're just like snapping the picture and your character's shaking the Polaroid, and you're like, come on. Oh, but the story, I didn't love the story in that one. At the end, it got kind of weird, but the puzzles were fun and the ambiance was very good. And then the other one was The Mortuary Assistant, which I played the demo of probably a year ago. You are a mortuary assistant. It's like your first real night on the job after having an internship, and you get locked in the funeral home by this man who is like, you have a demon inside you, and there might be some inside these other bodies as well, so I can't let you out until you find the other demon. So you're embalming these bodies, and you're also looking for signs of demonic activity. That game scared the shit out of me. It is so short, but the amount of jump scares and just your character starts to hallucinate on top of the demonic activity. So it's just like you'll go in the morgue and you'll come back around and try to bring somebody to the table, and there'll just be this little spectral figure on top of the cabinet. There's no musical sting or anything. You just see him. It's like I had full body chills. But that one was really short, but it was good. So those are my 2. And then I've also been watching Chucky, the TV show, because I'm a sucker for Child's Play.
I guess I'm waiting until the season ends up on Peacock. So I checked as soon as it premiered. I was like, oh, is it going to be on here? It's not. Okay.
When I tweeted that, I had so many people DM me, and they're like, I didn't know it wasn't going to be on Peacock. And I'm like, yeah, we all found that out together.
Listen, we don't have cable this day and
age. The first episode is on YouTube.
Okay.
Of the new season on Sci-Fi's channel, if you want to check that out.
Ooh, I might. I know I talked about 2 episodes ago that Shudder's doing the 101 scariest movie moments. But alongside it, they are doing Queer for Fear, which is LGBTQ themes in horror. And it's been so interesting because it's kind of going through chronologically. So the first episode was movies in the 30s and the Hays Code, and it's been so fun. People in there are hilarious. There was discourse about stuff I'm not going to get into on this podcast, but it was cracking me up.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about now.
Yep. I think anyone that's watched it, Rebecca, it is about Rebecca. Anyone that's watched it will know exactly what I'm talking about.
As a queer woman, I'm pretty sure I had that argument with at least one of my queer friends. So I was like,
that is hilarious. It was cool. And I got to see familiar faces on there, like BJ Colangelo, who's been on the podcast, I think was talking about specifically the Hays Code around that time, and just so fascinating, and just learning about stuff I didn't know about, Tony Perkins. I did not know hardly anything about him. I discovered outside that he was Norman Bates in Psycho. Kind of sad and heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was sad,
but very interesting. And I have been looking forward to it premiering for a really long time. So I was like, yeah. So there's like new episodes. I think they drop every Friday. And then the 101 scariest movie moments drop every Wednesday. So it's been like really fun to kind of gauge what I get to watch based on those episode drops. So that's something I've been enjoying. Brianna, you know the second tradition that we have on this podcast is we like to ask our guests for a final girl song.
I chose Tear You Apart by She Wants Revenge because
Love
I
it.
am always an emo kid. Just always. So yeah, that is Tear You Apart by She Wants Revenge. It's just fun.
It is fun. It's a good song. So I will be sure to add that on there. Well, Brianna, thank you so much for coming on and getting spooky and talking about Halloween horror.
Thanks again for having me.
Books in the Freezer is a bi-weekly podcast. We post episodes every other Tuesday. Usually this one's dropping on Monday because, of course, it's Halloween. You can find us on Twitter at Books Freezer Pod, on Instagram at Books in the Freezer, on TikTok at Books in the Freezer, or send us an email at booksinthefreezer@gmail.com. And just a little note from earlier in the episode. At the time of recording, I hadn't finished the final season of Dairy Girls, which, tears to my eyes, I can't believe it's over. It was perfect. But anyway, there was an episode in this season where they did have a big Halloween party, but it didn't seem to be tourist heavy, I guess, in the way that it was portrayed. Also, anyone that has been to Derry for Halloween, please let me know all about it. I would love to hear about it. And absolutely anyone from Anoka, please send me all the pictures. I want to hear all of these details. Also, after recording this, I saw several posts online about Salem being super overwhelmed by the amount of tourists and that it makes it very hard for the people that live there year round. So I'm thinking perhaps if I go up there in the future, it might not be October, maybe I'll do November or something where it's not super overwhelming, and maybe just less busy all around. I think it just might make it a more pleasant experience for everyone involved. Happy spooky season, listeners. If you are looking for a way to show your support for Books in the Freezer, there are quite a few ways to do that. One of them is to leave a review on a site like Apple Podcasts. Just take a few minutes, write a sentence or two, leave a star rating. All of that is huge and it really helps. You also have this option on Spotify where you don't have to write anything. You can just leave a star rating. So if you don't want to take the time to write something, that is an easy option as well. You can also become a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/booksinthefreezer. There's like a $1, a $3, and a $5 level where you get early episodes, group chats, movie nights. So check that out if that sounds interesting to you. You can also use affiliate links. That's kind of a win-win situation where you can get yourself something and then a small percentage of that goes to help the podcast. You can check several of those links out in the show notes. So things like Fangoria, Libro FM, and we have an Amazon link. So thank you so much to those of you who have done that. It is a huge help. I'm Stephanie. You can find me on Twitter at lady_Ganya. That's LADY_GAGNON. Or on Instagram at That's What She Read, and that is That's with 2 A's. So thank you for listening, and see you next time on Books in the Freezer.